Um, Making this before I go and do my normal live stream recap of uh, the NFL games, which were really quite tremendous. And on a day where the National Football League made more history, today there were more black quarterback on black quarterback game competitions than any ever before in the history of the NFL. Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson. Or how about the epic matchup tonight? Cam Newton and Russell Wilson. And then we had other contests as well. This proves that the problem of race that has plagued the NFL is very, very much coming to an end this year. It's been a wild year, but that's a great thing to celebrate. Last Sunday, we had a record 10 African-American quarterbacks starting for NFL teams. So there's a lot to cheer. And then tomorrow night, to shift gears, we're going to have the debut of the NFL in Las Vegas with the Raiders. And the Raiders have tried to get a stadium built. Didn't quite go about it the right way. I still object to the way it was done in the Oakland context, but I understand why Mark Davis did what he did, even as much as I don't agree with how he did it, okay? Because some of the reasons that led to Mark's actions are seeping into Ray Bobbitt's effort to establish an African-American owned NFL team in Oakland. And basically, I'll put it very simply and very coldly. It is Oakland's crab barrel problem. A crab barrel problem was first brought to me by my then boss and still friend, Robert Bob, who was then our Oakland city manager. And it was in the middle of my transitioning from working as Elihu Harris economic advisor to economic advisor for the Super Bowl effort, actually heading the Super Bowl effort. And what happened was I wanted to run economic development. The mayor had someone else in mind. So the mayor asked me to go and talk with that someone else. I did, as did Robert Bob. And to make a long story short, I happened to literally run into Bob. I could always call him Mr. Bob still, as I was headed out and he was headed in. And he said, well, how did it go with this person? And I said, well, that person says I talk like I think I know everything. And I responded back that I've talked this way since I was 6 years old, and they've had a problem with the way I talk because I'm black. Then perhaps I shouldn't be there. And he said, well, you do talk like you think you know everything. You're young, you're black, you're gifted, you're a threat. And so that started a conversation where he convinced me to stick around, and I did. But he also said this, did Robert Bob at the time. He said, Oakland is a crab barrel town. People like to pull you down. Okay? And that fact has come to play in many aspects of civic life in Oakland with respect to commerce. That statement could form a multi-part documentary that would stand the test of time regarding Oakland and why Oakland doesn't reach its potential, and why the word potential has come to dominate the lexicon of words used to describe Oakland to begin with. There's a chronic dissatisfaction with Oakland to a point where there is, particularly among African Americans, an annoyance with how something is done, because underlying there's this idea that it can't get done. And that's impacted this. In particular, one Oakland council member told me, I'm not going to get into names, that they called a consultant that really we hadn't, as City of Oakland, been in touch with since 2016, to my knowledge. That was on a $100,000 as needed contract at that time regarding our effort to keep the Raiders here, and said that he had that consultant call a particular owner, I'm not going to name the name, NFL owner, and that person didn't talk to the owner. But the council member told me that from the council member's description, it almost sounded like it was the fourth person on the deal team. In other words, someone that if I told this particular owner this was said about a contact attempt to him, he said he would say this: if it didn't come to me, it didn't happen. But that didn't stop the council member from saying to me that the consultant told him, and I hate that, saying to me the consultant told him, right? The indirect, that the question that they put out was the NFL planning to expand, which was never the question to begin with. Okay? Of course, since expansion is not on the table, the answer is going to be no. But it was the wrong question. And not only that, this act was done without the consultation of or the approval of the mayor of Oakland. And it seems of late, it doesn't matter if it's the chief of police or the public information officer with the Oakland Police Department or this particular council member, they seem to be allergic to the idea of making sure this is something that the mayor wants done before they actually do it. And so the mayor is always caught off guard, which should never happen. So, but you'd think, okay, why would this person, you'll go about doing that, right? Hey, Nugo, how you doing? Why would this person end up doing that? That's the main question. And again, I said to this person, well, instead of doing that, why didn't you call me, right? Why didn't you reach out to me? And this person, the council member, said, because I didn't want to. Or let me put it another way. I asked why the council member handled it, why by contacting that person. And the council member very coldly said, because I wanted to. In other words, my opinion be damned, okay? My experience or contacts or what I'm doing that's related to it doesn't matter, all right? And so rather than get a clean answer through me, or for that matter, why not, rather than bring it to an entire group of people or try to form that group, what this council member did was did it all on his own, but really by this person's tone for the purpose of putting a monkey wrench into the effort. It wasn't to help advance anything. He didn't want to come to any press conference. I was planning to talk about this problem. All right. And then on top of that, the effort itself is done, and this is a criticism of the way it's done and what Ray is doing to this point. He has his group. And the way this is done, unless the mayor has formally said anything about who should not and should do this, it's a free-for-all. Everybody can get involved in it, which is both good and bad. I think it's bad. And I think it's bad for this particular and specific reason. It's bad because of the way, what you want to do in terms of bringing a sports event to a town is you want to make sure that you have the community involved in the community's blessing. And you want to make sure that you have enough people with different roles so that they understand their roles, they're happy with their roles, and they don't feel like they're being left on the beach. You don't want to have what Robert Bob used to refer to as sniper fire. And that's what's going on here. There's a lot of sniper fire. And Oakland is really good. When I say sniper fire, I'll take that term out and I'll replace it with another term called friendly fire, which really is unfriendly fire, and for no reason. It's not for any good reason at all. Okay, it's I think it has to do with a lot of people who really want to see something get done, and yet there's no effort at the top to do it. And I think this is the hallmark of it. There's a collective frustration that someone at the top isn't doing something with what they want to have done. It's not desperation, it's frustration. That frustration has come to engulf a number of people. It engulfed Mark Davis. It engulfed the Athletics. It engulfed Joe Lacob and the Golden State Warriors, who told me, Lacob did, that Oakland was leadership challenged. It's stuff like this that he's talking about. Ray Bobbitt took action because he was frustrated, but Ray has his idea, and what Ray doesn't understand is that there is his idea, there's politics, and there's the outcome. And you have to go through the politics to get to that outcome with something like this. There's not an end run. You can't call an audible or design an end around to go around the defense and hope that you're going to score a touchdown. That's not the way this works. And that's why I said in the press conference, you need to have an NFL owner that's your cheerleader. You can't just do this and then be happy that you have a contact at the NFL that wrote you one letter. Okay. And I don't care what anyone says. I don't care if you have a letter. I don't care if you have models of what your stadium was going to look like. That, in this instance, what you have to have are people who have enough money to make it happen. Otherwise, all this is not real. You have to have a corporate structure so that somebody can actually put money into it, and you can buy insurance and have, even if it's a virtual office space and everything else. And that's not been done. Okay? But the worst thing in the world is to have Oakland politicians almost hostilely against you. That's wrong. And in my case, there are people who don't want me involved because of their issues with me, which are silly. Okay? This is Oakland, folks. This is Oakland. And I think it's appropriate to say it on the eve of the Raiders' first game in Las Vegas. Because, yeah, there's a lawsuit out. Yes, I agree that what was done should be adjudicated in court regarding the breach of implied contract and relocation effort. Certainly. But in the Oakland context, there's the hard fact that created Oakland. And that hard fact is, in terms of modern Oakland, in this problem, is this crab barrel mentality that's built around the fact there are people who are frustrated, and that unless everybody gets exactly what they want, that person comes to fore and says, all right, this is wrong. Now, am I doing that in this instance? Yes, I am. All right. Now, I'm doing it because others have done it already, most notably this council member. And then Ray allowed to have it done by keeping certain people out and not keeping people updated when he should. And then Ray wants to read headlines. And I'm saying this right now. That's a bad way to go. All right. I've said this behind the scenes. I've said it before. I've been here. I did this decades ago. And the way you do this is you don't say, okay, well, that was his thing, or they didn't get what they want, and I don't want to include that person. If that person has been there, I find that particularly insulting. No one, and the reason why I started my media company is to guarantee that no one successfully tried to take away the fact that I formed Oakland's only bid to host the Super Bowl. And so I know something about the way the league works. Period. End of story. I'm not the only one. There are a number of people. For example, Chris DeBenedetti was the chair of the Sports Entertainment Task Force under Ron Dellums. He should be involved. You had Doug Boxer, who had worked initially to try to keep the A's here. Why not call Doug? Why not marshal as many people together in Oakland as possible, but with the idea that, hey, look, we want to identify a Black ownership group. It doesn't take an entirely Black group of people to form a Black ownership group, because this really is a social issue to build, okay? And the numbers for community ownership don't quite work out. It's great to try. I'm not saying don't try, sure. But my whole point is, regardless of the structure, even beyond that, we all need to be one. And it's really wrong for Oakland to have a council member out there that says, that basically goes up on his own or her own and then says, you know what? My sources told me that it's not going to work. Well, you didn't ask the right question. As I explained to the council member today, I said, look, the NFL is a mom and pop. And he starts yelling at me. Oh, NFL is not a mom and pop. It's billionaires. Well, look, you can be a mom and pop and have billions of dollars. Mom and pop means you have a small number of people who run the organization. Amy Trask will tell you that, okay? They didn't have like 1,000 people that worked in their building every single day. Sure, they do on game day, but those thousands of people are represented by the Oakland police and concessionaires and so on. But it's not the classic big company. They command a lot of money, but the families themselves that tend to own the NFL historically are worth a lot of money. Hence the term mom and pop. Corporations do not own NFL football teams. These are truly mom and pops. But this person deems to think that they know more than I do. And the simple fact that I said it that way is where the rub comes from. Again and again and again. Hey, John Marks, how you doing? Okay. At some point you have to say, gee, you know, when are we going to, as a city, stop this sort of thing? And that's why I'm putting this out there right now. Again, and I'm doing this deliberately on the eve of the Raiders playing in Allegiant Stadium. If Oakland is to move forward, we have to stop this, okay? In, I hate to say the old days, but they were days of Oakland past. We had, for example, when we had the All-Star game for Major League Baseball, we had something called Celebration Oakland. That was way back in 1992. Jim Copes was part of that, has old school Copes in his shirts today with the Oakland Chamber, which brings up another question. Was the Oakland Black Chamber of Commerce contacted? All right. What about the standard Oakland Chamber of Commerce to say, hey, look, you know, I'd like your help. Can you please, Barbara Leslie, marshal your Black members to get involved, your members entirely, to combine the best of all of these? Why not? It's not something Barbara would say no to. Barbara would ask, is the mayor on board? The mayor is certainly on board with a positive effort like this. But being on board with something does not mean that a person has the city's resources, and it doesn't mean that all the councils together and the mayor has had a formal presentation before the council to say, this is what we want to do, which really would be the cool way to proceed so that you get that out of the way. I can tell you from working on the Super Bowl, we didn't have the council. The council didn't say no. The council didn't say yes. The reason why is because Mr. Bob was certain, I was too, that the council didn't understand enough of it to give it a green light. And so it was better that we build as much as we could in terms of connecting in terms of checking off the marks of corporate structure and approvals and contacts. Like, for example, we had documents for hotel rooms. We only got 7,821 hotel rooms. We needed 15,000, but we did get a letter pledge from the San Mateo County Convention and Visitors Bureau. This was in 1999. So, excuse me, year 2000. So we were making progress, even as much as then Oakland Mayor Jerry Brown was not on board. And then the San Francisco Chronicle, and John Diaz, who was the editorial page editor then, didn't say, hey, look, Jerry, you should get involved. They praised us for getting as far as they did, but then turned around. John didn't personally bit me in the ass and said, hey, you don't have the mayor on board, as opposed to saying, hey, Jerry, you should be on board. Look what Zinni did without much help at all. You see what I'm getting at? In the Bay Area, there are all these people who are very ready to pull against you more than they'll advance it. Now, you would say, why did it work in the San Francisco parlance? Good, quite question. Because what they had to start off was they had San Francisco 49ers owners, Dr. York and Jed York, and Denise DeBartolo York, who wanted to build a new stadium. And with a new stadium, you get a Super Bowl. So that simple equation and the involvement of an NFL owner made it easy. In the Oakland context, it was much more complicated. Much more complicated because we didn't have the cooperation of the Raiders. We were in, at least publicly, we were in a lawsuit with them. Behind the scenes, I got a great deal of help from Amy Trask and Alo Casal and among other people. But, the fact of the matter is that we were in the middle of a lawsuit and everyone pointed that out. Jerry Brown could have went in and made it easy. The point is that and I had a task force, the Oakland Alameda County Sports Commission and the Super Bowl 39 bidding committee, because the NFL says you have to establish that. All right. So I established a nonprofit and I got it approved by the federal government within 4 months. The Oakland City Attorney Jane Williams said it was going to take me 2 years. Wrong. I beat her. Okay. John Marks asked, he says, which Oakland councilmember says it's not going to work? I'm not going to name names. It's not that's not the purpose of, that's not the point of this. Okay. It's not even, the name is less important than the fact that this has been done. All right. That's the fact. So I'm not going to spend much more time on this, but I want to explain to everyone that, if anything, if you want to see the other reason for why, again, why the Raiders ultimately wound up in Las Vegas, it's for reasons like this. In the Raiders context, they needed help. They didn't quite understand how things were going. They needed one well-moneyed benefactor to come forward and say, I will help you. It didn't matter if it was the city or a private person, as it was in the context of Las Vegas, right? So, he got ultimately, and Mark was frustrated. He was trying to get something done. And sure, he had, some people say he had, he didn't like being in Oakland and had his reasons for that. But I will tell you where everything went wrong for us in that context. And where everything went wrong for us is when Nate Miley came out of the Raiders office, I believe it was May 15th of 2015, and just decided that right then and there, he would put out a press release that said this isn't working in terms between the city and the county, and he wanted to sever. Note the imagery. He came out of the Raider headquarters and did that. You hear what I'm saying? He came out of Raider headquarters and did that. I mean, like that, okay? And I consider a friend. I like Nate, but facts are facts. He didn't need to do that. All right? We didn't have a task force. The sports commission I established after I left, the city did nothing to maintain it. Goose egg, zero. They did nothing to come up with anything to replace it. We had a person over the reconstituted Oakland Convention and Visitors Bureau who talked for 6 months about forming a sports commission. I didn't talk about it, folks. I did it. Because at the end of the day, it was about building a nonprofit corporate structure. So all this yapping, and talking is nothing if you have no government-approved corporate structure where you can take donations and write-offs, and you have a business plan and everything else. Okay, so I'm not saying so no Oakland football. There is Oakland football. You've got the Oakland Panthers indoor league, you got the Oakland Panthers outdoor, and you've got JJ Lasley involved in that. So in a perfect world, you could make an argument that we have the infrastructure people already. So, but again, JJ had his conflict in terms of the name, because Marshawn Lynch and his group and Scott McKibben used that name, and they had a conflict with them that the Oakland Panthers indoor people pushed by taking advantage of the fact that JJ Lasley had nothing other than his statement. There was no trademark filing or anything. Okay. So, and at the end of the day, there should have been one Oakland Panthers organization doing indoor football, right? And outdoor football. It should not have been separate, but it became separate. Okay. John says, Nate shouldn't. He says, what I meant is no NFL Oakland. Well, no, the NFL isn't not coming here. That's not the whole point. The NFL, there was not a date saying, oh, it's going to happen. I still believe it will happen. But the reason why I believe it will happen is because I'm forcing the issue of getting our act together in terms of how we work together. I'm putting it out there right now because I've been through this. I've lived through this. I had to swim through this. I had to try to survive. I have story after 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 story. So it's not, all right. So in the Raiders context in Vegas, Las Vegas needs a stadium. And what I've always loved about Las Vegas, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I said it before this whole issue came up, is that Las Vegas has an entrepreneurial culture. If you want to get something done, if you have an idea, if you are a person that can, make a juggling act in a very interesting way or what have you, you can go to Las Vegas and make a name for yourself. Las Vegas is very pro-business. And so from that context, Mark picked the right place to get done, and the right person in Sheldon Neidls to get as far as he did, which is to build a state-of-the-art facility for sports and entertainment. And so I applaud him for that. He worked with the right person in terms of one of my economic development heroes, and that's Stephen Hill, who is now the president of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Bureau, as well as the chairman of the Las Vegas Stadium Authority. All right. I said last week, it's another feather in Steve's cap. All right. And he says, Vegas got it done. They had what in 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 astronomy terms, we call it the grand alignment. I don't know if anyone remembers the grand alignment because it actually did occur, where you have this alignment between the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun. You know, the grand alignment there. No, I think Earth, Moon, Sun, and I believe what is Earth, Moon, Sun, um, Venus. Was it? I think it was Venus, Earth, Moon, Sun, and wait, so it's Sun, Venus, Moon, Earth, Mars. Like the grand alignment, something like that. But in Las Vegas case, they had the perfect economic development grand alignment. They had senators like Harry Reid, governors like Brian Sandoval. They had commissioners in Clark County and other counties, and most notably Clark County commissioners. They had Steve Sisolak. They had former Commissioner Christian Giuliani, among others. They had Guy Hobbs of Hobbs Ong to do the financial modeling, along with Jeremy Aguilo of Applied Analytics and his people that he works with. They had, of course, they needed the casinos. They had people. They had Steve Wynn. They had not just Sheldon Adelson involved, of course, who really spearheaded this, but Jim Murin of MGM and many others. They had people, because this was originally supposed to be a UNLV stadium, right? Who are UNLV alums like Adelson and others who had been dreaming for a stadium like that one that will be officially used tomorrow for a long, long time. So at its heart, Las Vegas is a small town that is trying to be a big city. I say this: be careful what you ask for you may often get it. But the consequences are not necessarily what you want either. That's my fair warning, okay? Las Vegas needs this facility in the middle of this pandemic, but arguably Oakland does too, because as we've lost the Raiders, the Warriors, we've lost a lot of us. It was very comforting to me, and I'm sure that those of you out there who watch sports around the country to know, hey, look, even if I'm living in Oakland, and I'm away from home, I can see how the Raiders are doing, or the Warriors. They all play there, right? And you can call your friends, and you get what I'm saying. Well, a lot of that's gone. And they took the informal economy, at least a good chunk of it, with it. Those people that were working as ushers and in other service categories at the stadiums, and even higher up too, because average stadium employment wages are about $68,000 a year, somewhere in there. I believe higher than that now. There are management positions at stadiums. People forget that. But all that's gone. I remember a woman who worked at the Raiders games and the Warriors games told me that she could string together a full-time day twice over the weekend that really helped her with her expenses during the week. It's great stuff. It's also gone. Maybe she got a job at Chase Center, but the whole Raiders possibility is gone too. Now you would say we have a pandemic, and I would say yes. Well, my retort would be the pandemic situation is not going to last forever. And at the end of the day, what you want to have is a facility that you can at least repurpose in some kind of creative way to serve the economic development needs of the city and the county. In other words, the people, right? That's gone, okay? And Las Vegas does have that. Las Vegas has what it has always wanted: a large-scale events center. That's what we now call Allegiant Stadium was originally referred to in the draft legislation called Senate Bill 1. All right. So we need to get our act together. And if you would say what I would like to have happen, I would like the mayor to formally form a sports task force. All right. To really get it done. This is not something Libby has done. And make it an all hands task force to help align this and make it so that we can have it as a presentation ground for ideas and a way forward. Okay. Because all this is happening around the mayor, and it's wrong that it does. And the mayor needs to be seen as in the driver's seat for this, because it can also be brought to bear on the problem with the A's and Howard Terminal. Because look, Dave Cavall is thinking, hey, look, I'm going through all this with Howard Terminal, and yet there are people who just seem to want to pull this out from under me. And I'm sure that if he sees this, he'll agree a lot with what I'm talking about. The A's want Howard Terminal. I know why they want it, because they believe that they can build a crown jewel that the world will envy at that site. And as much as I like the Coliseum, I agree with him. However, I believe the Coliseum should remain for sports. All these discussions should be marshaled in a task force so we can have a come to Jesus decision about how to do this. And it's as face-to-face as we can, as opposed to all this back channel backstabbing stuff. That's exactly what's going on, folks. Okay? All right? And for me, what did it was, I have an idea. I don't need to wait on somebody. Oh, wait for this or wait for that. No. Why should I wait when I know from experience, I mean, decades of experience, that if you're told to wait in an effort involving bringing sports to Oakland specifically, that means the person that's telling you to wait is telling you that they don't really want you involved, or they don't know what they're doing, or they're busy and haven't done it yet, and somebody else they're talking to is further undermining their efforts. That's exactly what's going on here. I've seen this before, and I've seen it many times, going as far back as, I would say, 1996, regarding the effort to find a buyer for the Athletics. I would say that even goes back further than that. We all tried to get Cirque du Soleil in here, and that was in 96. But that had a happy ending because Oakland Councilmember Richard Spees, on the one hand, and I joined forces, even though we had competing efforts. But we still had competing efforts. I didn't know what Dick was up to, but he knew what I was up to. So he decided he was going to go in his direction without telling me. I found out about it. I called him and I said, hey, we need to come together rather than you reading about what I'm doing in a newspaper and vice versa. That's wrong. That same, the seeds of that culture, that cultural problem exists today. And what I'm calling for is for it to end now. All right. Will Libby do it? I hope so. No, I think at some point it will happen in some kind of way. Can the A's leave Oakland? For where, John? I'm not saying the A's are out of here. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Nobody's going anywhere right now. Okay. That's not happening. But because of that, this is the perfect time to get our act together rather than to repeat our mistakes. Right now, we're repeating our mistakes. All right. So he says, I hope not. AB 734 shouldn't let the A's walk off. The A's are not going to walk off. John Marks. Read the legislation carefully. Don't just quote it, read it. Because there are 3 bills that together allow the A's access to infrastructure financing assistance that, assuming a $2 billion base year assessed value for redevelopment area in Jack London Square, including the ballpark, and a modest rate of growth at assessed value of just 4%. Remember that even though you might be screaming back the pandemic, let me explain to you that the County of Alameda tax assessor can increase the assessed value throughout the county by a 2% rate of growth. That's Prop 13. All right. So we have 2% of the 4% already taken care of. Okay. So really it's an additional 2%. It's not much, but at a modest rate of growth of 4% per annum for 40 years, that's $1.4 billion in redevelopment revenue, assuming a simple 1% annual tax rate take. That's it. That's for the A's. Part of that, because of the way the legislation is written, can be used for economic development throughout the city of Oakland, for affordable housing throughout the city of Oakland. Read the legislation, because the A's are not going to find that anywhere else in the country. And Dave Cavall knows it. All right. Okay, I'll see everybody later. And thanks, and go Oakland. Go Oakland. Thank you.